Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast and our final preview show for this year's US Open, the final Grand Slam of the 2025 season. You find us in the Media Garden in the eaves of the Arthur Ashe Stadium in what can only be described as a wind tunnel. It is 5:30 in the evening. It's pretty warm, but not thick and sticky in the way it often can be in New York at this time of year, and we are here to give you our last gasp hot takes ahead of the tournament. And by we, I mean myself, Catherine Whitaker, my co-host David Law and Matt Roberts, and for today's show we are also joined by the Athletics' Charlie Eccleshare, buoyant after a 5-0 Arsenal win. Had it gone a different way, we might have cancelled your invitation, Charlie.
Yeah, good news for everyone.
We all remember last year. In fact, that's the most annoyed we've ever seen you, I think, day one of the US Open last year.
That and being messed around for an interview yesterday that David witnessed and said he just saw all the signs. He spotted it. You could see from my body language, from my face.
Yeah.
Well, it's very good to have you. And we've got a lot to get into. I feel like increasingly, I mentioned this yesterday, increasingly media day isn't really a thing, is it? It's 2 days, it's a period of time, and we've had Swiatek in today, Osaka, Fritz, Draper, Alcaraz.
Yeah, we normally refer to those coming in on day two as the stragglers, but it's too high profile a cast to call them stragglers. They're actually some of the main contenders to win the tournament.
It's been a pretty even split, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Often this day is like 2 or 3 big names.
Works better like this, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Dividing it up,
yeah.
So everybody gets a bit more oxygen, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the stories, you sort of spread out the stories a little bit. And actually I feel like we need to cover this off. We have had, as a result of Novak Djokovic's press yesterday, the Serbian section of that press conference, some quotes have emerged from that and been translated, suggesting that Novak Djokovic might be poised to hire Monica Seles as a coaching figure for this US Open. He said there are initial discussions. It's more about emotions than a long-term collaboration. It would mean a lot to me.
And that would be entirely in keeping with Novak Djokovic's career to date, if you think about it, because this is a guy who has so far in his career hired Todd Martin, Mark Woodford, Boris Becker, Andre Agassi, Mario Ancic, Radek Stepanek, Andy Murray. And
Pepe Imaz didn't get a mention.
No, I'm afraid not. I mean, obviously the standout was his long-time coach, whose name has escaped me.
Marion Vida.
Sorry, Marion. But the fact is that I think, and I really believe this was part of his hire of Andy Murray, it's just curiosity, and it's somebody he's always admired, and he'd look at Monica Seles. I mean, aside from the fact that she's an incredible tennis mind, who won so many Grand Slam titles and was such an amazing player when he was a kid and would have looked up to her. I imagine he just wants to hang out with her and find out everything she's thinking and was thinking and thinks about him.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's an emotional thing. I mean, US Open starts pretty soon. So, I mean, thinking about we know something I might be doing.
Coco Gauff's remodelling her entire serve.
Yeah, maybe get this sorted.
Yeah. I mean, he
literally plays Lone Etienne tomorrow.
he wants to
she's
look
in the
up.
box.
Yeah.
He wants to look up on the court and see someone there that he wants to impress.
That's it. Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Somebody cool.
It's added motivation.
Yeah.
And look, I know he still does have the motivation at the slams, but I do get the sense that this one is the toughest for him still. Like, if he had to pick one not to play, it might be this one, just where it falls in the season. I mean, after Wimbledon we did speculate about whether he would even show up here. I think we all thought he did, but it occurred to us that he might not.
Though I do actually think in some ways this, I know we felt the conventional wisdom was that either French Open or Wimbledon is his best chance, but I think really what it comes down to for him is where his two big rivals who are so far ahead of him, Sinner and Alcaraz, can be diminished in any way. And I think the fact that Alcaraz just isn't the force he is at the French Open and at Wimbledon, the fact that there is the possibility that he could go out before he has to play Novak in the semis, I do think that does make quite a big difference, just because ultimately, if Novak has to play them both, he's just not going to win a Grand Slam. He's just not. He basically admitted that at Wimbledon. I think the only way he can win one is if one of them gets beaten, possibly even two. And so I think for me, when I look at where his best chances are, I'm thinking, well, where can someone do him a favour? And I think here and the Australian Open, that's where that's most likely to happen.
That's very interesting. And I suspect now he's seen his draw as well. Maybe it was after the draw came out that he picked up the phone to Monica.
Monica!
I've got a chance here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
we're on!
I certainly think that in theory what Charlie says there is true. I'm not quite sure in reality it does feel like that. Like, Sinner feels incredibly fresh to me at this time of the season compared to what he might have felt if he'd played a really arduous, grueling season and obviously had those 3 months off. I think Sinner's got a lot in the tank, and Alcaraz was in press today talking about how much better he feels at this US Open compared to last year's, for example, when obviously he had the Olympics. Like, I don't know, I think the US Open so often has been the one where there's been more variety of winners, and we talked about it yesterday in terms of for them to actually play 3 successive Grand Slam finals against each other in a season, Alcaraz and Sinner, that would be a historic thing. So chances are there could well be an upset. It just doesn't feel to me like we're primed for a big upset.
Do you not think there are doubts over Alcaraz here in the way that there aren't, certainly at the French Open and Wimbledon? Like, just the fact that since winning it, he's had quite disappointing exits. I know that last year was like a bit of an outlier, but I don't know, I just feel like he's got a little bit more to prove here.
Yeah, well, I think he's got more of an edge over a lot of players on clay and on grass. Like, those surfaces can bring out so much of the amazing aspects of his game. I think last year, you've talked a lot about this, Catherine, I think we will come to view that Botic van der Zandschulp loss very much.
It's the weirdest thing that ever happened.
Right. and very much through an Olympic lens. Like, I think it was so to do with how he was feeling after that. In 2023 here, he obviously lost to Medvedev.
That was a weird one, wasn't it?
That was a weird one. And
but Medvedev was unreal.
Medvedev was brilliant.
For that match.
Like, that's the best match Medvedev played in years, and
Alcaraz was so young still then,
to
wasn't
beat
he?
him. So I do agree that there is more of an uncertainty around Alcaraz here compared to the French and Wimbledon. But, like, would you right now be predicting him not to get to that semi-final with Djokovic?
Maybe Charlie's an Opelka guy.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't make that prediction, but I also wouldn't be sort of like crazily surprised if it did happen. Just because most people can play on hard courts, so I don't think he's going to face many people who are just kind of so unnatural on either clay or grass.
Did you take a lot from that Alcaraz press conference in terms of what he said about how much better he's feeling compared to last year? Because, like, it seems obvious to me that he would be feeling better than he was last year, and yet Carlos Alcaraz always comes into press and says, I'm feeling great. Like, he's just never going to ever say, oh, life's a bit crap at the moment. He's Carlos Alcaraz. Like, or I hope he never comes in and says that. I've never seen it before. Like, that's just his vibe, isn't it? Like, great to be here. I feel great. Let's go.
It's always really hard, is it? Because I wonder, I'm trying to think back to a year ago, and I remember what we were talking about was the fact that because he hadn't lost a Grand Slam final at that point, the Olympics was the first sort of really big loss he'd had and how he was going to respond. But I did think we also thought, well, maybe, now he's got that out of the way and we'll see how he responds. Like, I can't remember specifically, but I don't imagine that this time a year ago we were saying, wow, he looked flat, he looked knackered, he's going to lose to Botic van der Zandschulp.
Watch out for Botic.
Yeah.
I can confirm we were not saying that. We did a whole part one of a podcast in which I failed to mention Botic and immediately put Alcaraz through to the next round.
Some people more than others were specifically not mentioning him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember how crazy that was when, after Jack Draper had won his match to get into the third round, and all the questions to him after were, what's going to be playing Carlos Alcaraz? How's it going to be playing Carlos Alcaraz? And someone, I can't remember who it was, said half jokingly, like, should we do like a Botic? It was honestly like laughable. You know how normally you say to a player, like, can you give us a word on both of your opponents? Didn't even bother with that.
Draper was in press today, wasn't he? What did we make of what he had to say? He had quite a lot to say, didn't he? Like, I feel like we learnt a lot about where Jack Draper's
I don't know about
today.
you. I wasn't entirely convinced about the fitness of that arm, because when he gave his first answer, I mean, look, watching him in the mixed doubles the other day, I thought, whoa, look how he's hitting the ball on the first day. And then I read a couple of tweets and a couple of messages and reports of people saying he was running around the forehand to hit the backhand. And so I thought, okay, well, when he was describing the details of what he'd had done, and have you got the specifics, Catherine, of what the problem was?
It was bone bruising to the humerus in his left arm, which is the funny bone, isn't it?
Yeah. And basically, he needed to rest it, didn't he?
Yes. He said if it wasn't addressed, it could have become serious. He'd been playing with pain for quite a long period, started feeling it midway through the clay court season. He said he went a full month without hitting serves, and he went 2.5 weeks without hitting ground strokes. He was still able to do other training, and he did sort of confirm that he really put some time in the gym, which is sort of visibly evident. He did say there's still some pain, but he said, I won't be holding back.
Yeah,
so
well,
slightly mixed messaging.
Exactly, I just didn't see how those two things could follow.
No, the way I asked the question was because he'd said I'd been playing through it at Wimbledon, kind of managing it, and I said, are you still playing through something here at the moment? How is it affecting you with your strokes? And I just got the sense that when they give you an answer and they elaborate more than somebody who's fully fit would.
Yeah.
If you're fully fit, you just go, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I feel great. Whereas he just gave chapter and verse, and by the end of it, I remember thinking, well, that ain't standing up to scrutiny.
But and also, it totally stands to reason. He doesn't want to say that. He doesn't want to give his opponents that, lift by saying, yeah, I'm massively playing through pain. But yeah, I didn't really see how that stacked up. And also the fact that he was asked, well, at Wimbledon then, you never mentioned it, and would that explain a little bit why you did struggle? And again, he played that down, which I think was, I'm sure a lot of that is just out of respect to Marin Cilic. He doesn't want to come in to the interview room and be seen to be saying, yeah, I was injured and that's why I lost. But I think it also just speaks to the fact that players don't like to blame these things, and I didn't come out of that press conference reassured, I have to say. And
if it is more of a problem than he's prepared to explicitly state, then kind of big picture, that's a massive worry for him, isn't it? Because he's just taken a month off, month without hitting serves. He said I had a longer time off than I even had in pre-season. Like, if that hasn't sorted it out and it continues to bother him, when's he next going to be able to have a long month off? If this is a chronic situation that he's managing and playing through, it's hard to see this getting better any time soon. And he kept on coming back to the mantra of, I'm just desperate to compete, which kind of underlines the suspicion that maybe that desperation is a big part of the decision making.
And kind of interesting how within the same press conference he was obviously asked a lot about his new clothing deal.
Yeah, by Charlie.
By Charlie.
Charlie's a clothing guy.
Very much so.
But come on to that in a moment,
but,
Charlie.
we do very often talk about, pressures on players to play. And, he's just signed this new deal. He literally said, I'm the face of
Vori's thoughts.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
and
the face of that brand.
He is all over Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like, it really struck me how much Jack Draper there is around, he's big around Gramercy Theatre, where we did our live show the other day. Like, not a Tennessee part of town. Jack Draper's face appeared a lot.
And I'm not saying he's only playing the US Open because of that new brand, but like those small pressures that players have to deal with in terms of playing. If you are managing an injury, and it's a question of whether you play or not. Like, that might be the sort of thing that pushes you to play, and it might not be the best thing for your kind of career overall.
And defending a lot of points as well here.
Here, for sure, absolutely.
You've been asking, you're obviously working on a piece about clothing sponsorship. I assume, Charlie, unless it's just a personal
really
interest of yours.
Yeah. Just trying to get a sponsorship myself, and I'm hoping if I put myself out there enough in press conferences, Rory might
You've been
approach
asking
me.
a lot of players about that element of kind of off-court stuff, and he was interesting on it, Draper, wasn't he? Like, he did pretty much explicitly say, because obviously he was with Nike before, and now he's with this relatively unknown brand. He's now big fish in a smaller pond rather than a smaller fish in a bigger pond, and he said that was a big deal. Like, he didn't want to be playing third fiddle to Sinner and Alcaraz anymore. That was an interesting psychological insight.
Yeah, Tiafoe said something similar yesterday, and there was a great line. He said something like, Nike have one or two decent players or something. It was really well put. I think that does make a big difference to players. And he also, Draper, was interested to say, like, when you're playing against a guy wearing the same kit as you, it's not great. That was a dig. Obviously, I don't think he's like going after them individually. We know that's a thing in tennis, but I think a lot of players, it's become a bit of a trend, play and moving towards kind of like lifestyle brands. And obviously, Jack talked about it. This sort of thing is really important to him. You mentioned, there's billboards and things like that. But I think it must be for these players. When you've got like Sinner and Alcaraz dominating the tour like they do, you might think, well, at least I can go and like be the guy for this other brand. And he did talk about that, so clearly that does mean something to him.
Tennis Twitter thinks that Nike have sort of lost interest in tennis, don't they?
Interesting.
Is that the impression you get?
It's certainly striking that the number of players who are changing. I mean, Nike used to be so like the brand. I mean, it was kind of like between Nike and Adidas, and now you've got lots of different players. I get like there's inevitably you're probably not going to eat, because even for like if you're the biggest tennis player but you're with Nike, you are, if you care, probably conscious of the fact that they've got bigger athletes than you on their roster, and it might not be like their biggest priority. So I don't know, like it's definitely I don't know how bothered they would be a brand that big, because they do have all these like absolute superstars. But certainly in tennis, it does feel like a trend.
I think they want to narrow it down. They've got the two in the men's game. They've got the two biggest ones in Alcaraz and Sinner, and I think that they'd rather have a couple of absolute household names.
They always used to. Their strategy always used to be making sure they signed up any kind of potentially prodigious talent, sign them up young, get them, and then drop them if needs be if they don't make it good. But that always used to be their strategy. But it does feel like just give us the big ones, and we'll that's kind of all we're interested in. But it does feel like kind of slightly niche brands are having a bit of a moment. Coco Gauff's with New Balance, like, okay, that's not niche, but it's not Nike.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and I think the sort of fashiony crossover, like Taylor Fritz is with Hugo Boss. That sort of thing is quite unusual. Tiafoe's with Lululemon. Like, that those lines are being blurred a bit between kind of like the fashion, culture, tennis space, which is why I think it is quite an interesting subject, just because where tennis and culture intersect, certainly for our readers, is often kind of quite grabby.
Lululemon is the one I would pick. I think it's so clearly better quality than all the others.
If you could choose.
If I could choose. The fabric is sweat wicking, folks. Why do more brands not seem to realise the importance of that?
But I am interested, because like a couple of the players, I mean, Coco Gauff was talking about it yesterday, and Francis as well, like they feel it does make a really big difference, less from the like, less the kind of like press release stuff you get about how, the wicking does XYZ, more just from a like, I want to look really cool on court. That makes a big difference to like how much, because tennis is so much about this kind of me versus you 1v1, but if I can feel like the guy as I go on court, Tiafoe was certainly suggesting that does make a difference.
Are you ready to talk about an on player, Charlie, or too much trauma?
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about Iga Świątek. That was a reference to Charlie's exchange with Ben Shelton in press yesterday.
Yeah, he didn't like the suggestion that On wasn't as big a company as Nike and Adidas.
Don't like that question.
Yeah, I would suggest that's incontrovertible.
Did you read anything into his chippiness, like in terms of where his headspace is at, or did you think it was just kind of a touch of?
Yeah, I don't know. It's always hard to say. Like, you never know what's gonna. Well, I mean, obviously you have some sense, but I guess you wouldn't do. You know, sometimes you ask questions and you're slightly bracing yourself because you know it's a delicate topic. Others can kind of take you by surprise. That definitely took me by surprise. Yeah,
lobbing up a "would you like to talk about one of your sponsors" question is usually really safe territory in the press conference room.
Yeah, and I think it's like sometimes as well the way I learned this with Ant Postecoglou, because he's a great one for one wrong word and he's on you, and you do learn, like, sometimes you can say one thing and that takes a player thinks you're asking maybe a different question to what you're asking, so you do have to be mindful of that. I don't know, like, there is a lot of pressure on him. He comes in here as a high seed, really, for the first time. You know, he's always been previously, he's been in that bracket of, like, on his day he could, you know, he's got this really high ceiling, but he's not necessarily thought of as one of the tournament favourites. I think this year, for the first time, he maybe is one, you know, outside of those two who are so far ahead. But other than that, I don't think there's anyone massively ahead of him.
The locals, the Americans, are expecting him to deliver.
And he's a guy that needs to be loose.
Yeah.
I think.
And think how many commitments he's going to have had. I mean, like, you know, there is a lot asked of these players in this week, especially, you know, at the US Open. There are so many sponsors, like, it's so much razzle dazzle.
Goff said, I couldn't play the mixed doubles because of the volume of sponsor commitments I have here.
Exactly. So I think, like, I'm sure he, you know, everyone's wanting a piece of him, and you know, that's a lot for a player. So yeah, I guess we'll see in his early rounds, because they often talk about that, don't they, players, that it's those early rounds that can be quite stressful as well, because that's quite terrifying, the idea of an early exit, when you know everyone's kind of just assuming you'll get to
like when Andy Roddick went out to Gilles Muller in 2005, and he came in off the back of this massive ad campaign with American Express, which was all built around whether anybody could find Andy's mojo because he'd lost it on a plane. As though it was a physical thing, and he'd
like
wake
in Austin
up.
Powers.
Exactly, and it was trying to poke fun at the fact that he's about to go roaring through the US Open draw and face Roger Federer and beat him in the final. I mean, he was world number one at the time, lost first round in straight sets to Gilles Muller, 3 tie breaks.
Wow. Fresh from a Wimbledon final, wasn't he, that year? Yeah,
that's right. They kept running that ad for a couple of days, and then they pulled it.
Iga Świątek, fellow on sponsory. The difference in her. We've all been in a lot of Iga Świątek press conferences this year. She's a different person.
It's incredible.
It is. I mean, I was expecting her to be relaxed. We've seen it. You know, we saw it in the mixed doubles. She loved that. She very clearly loved that. You know, she's won Wimbledon. It's all going great. There's no reason not to be that way, and yet it is still, I think, incredibly striking how loose her demeanour is.
Yeah, especially because, like, players, including her, you know, they talk so much about the process, etc., but then you see seemingly she's been transformed by the results and the outcomes, and I don't know how I feel, because like, that's kind of how it should, you know, winning Wimbledon should be this amazing lift, but I don't know, it's also just kind of scary in a way, because clearly, and why wouldn't it be, as much as players talk about the process and I'm not going to be defined by my results, they are. And we're seeing a really visible, you know, and I know she's talked obliquely about kind of other, and she kind of referenced that today. She said, she worded it slightly oddly, but she said, like, she started the year well and then there were other perspectives or something.
Yeah, she said the season got a bit more complicated from other perspectives.
I think she meant kind of outside of the court.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, so maybe it's those things have all kind of resolved and what have you, but, you know, the main thing seems to be she won Wimbledon and she looks like she's floating.
She also sounds as though she's seen the results of her hard work. The question Matt asked her about, training for faster court surfaces. Really got an effusive answer from her, I thought. She seemed really almost pleased to have been asked about that, and I think that is something that happens sometimes. It's, finally, all this work I've been putting in with Wim Fissette, and now I can see what it was all for.
Yeah, it just struck me because if you'd said that after a long title drought, Iga Swiatek would end it by winning Wimbledon and then go on to win Cincinnati, that would have felt like an alternative timeline, a year ago or so, considering her real success came on clay or came on, some of the slower hard courts like Indian Wells, for example. I know it's quick through the air there, but it's a slow court, high bouncing court. That's where she's had so much of her sort of dominance. And it was just notable to me that these wins have come on quicker, lower bouncing surfaces. And she referenced back to the start of the year, the off-season in Australia, where, think about it, at the time, we were effusive in our praise and how well Iga Swiatek was playing.
It's easy to forget that. She was thrashing players.
She was brilliant. And she played... Okay, she had some bad moments against Madison Keys, but generally she played a really good match against the eventual champion.
And she had a match point. I mean, she was
had
a point
a match
away.
Point. She could not easily, but she could have won the Australian Open this year. It wouldn't have been sort of preposterous to, for that to happen, considering how well she was playing. And yet, it does really seem like she was happy with all the work that she'd done there. She implemented it in Australia, and then things just went, well, as she said, things got complicated from other perspectives. Things went really wrong through that portion of the season that is traditionally her stranglehold on the season, the Middle East swing, the clay court swing. But it feels like at Wimbledon and at Cincinnati, she's been able to implement those things that she worked on in the off-season again, and she's thrilled about it. And yeah, absolutely, as you said, it was a really uplifting, actually, to see Swiatek like that. In her first answer, she said, positive, excited, happy. And so often Iga Swiatek press conferences have got off on a note where you think, oh, okay, she's not feeling that well here, and you sort of tread a little bit carefully. This was just open and just a really, really nice, relaxed vibe to it.
I do think a big part of it, I think by her own admission, is someone, and I know people close to her have spoken about it, she's not someone who will just easily let people in. And I do think it will have taken Wim Fissette quite a lot of time to kind of earn that trust. And she even mentioned it, even now, that she kind of needs proof of concept when he asks her to do stuff. So I do think, over time, it feels like she's kind of trusting him a bit more, and the dam's burst a little bit, and now it's like, okay, we're onto something here. And that there's this kind of positive feedback loop she's now getting with results, and I think that's made a really big difference. Whereas early on, I think there probably was an element of is this working? Is this the right thing necessarily?
And good for her for sticking with it.
Yeah, exactly, because after the French Open, it felt like, how long is this going to last? And just on the French Open there, you mentioned, Matt, her opening line, and just thinking back to Roland Garros and her first press conference, and that was when Matt Futterman asked her, do you get a lift from being here? And she gave that really snippy answer, well, do you? And Matt said, well, I'm not a four-time champion. But that was where she was at that time. It was really, it felt like anything you said. And I remember when I did my voice note with you guys from Madrid and mentioned, talked through one of those press conferences, and it was really uncomfortable. The contrast in a few months is incredible.
We said Naomi Osaka in today. David, did you feel like you were in the press conference of the future champion?
Yeah. Told you.
What made you?
I ain't backing
what
that
reassured you?
Well, honestly, what went on in the press conference had no bearing on it at all. I don't understand why people are so outraged and up in arms about the fact that somebody might think that a twice champion of the past, only in the last few years, who's won 4 Grand Slams on a hard court, might win this tournament.
Who reached the final of her previous event.
Yes.
Yeah, compared to some of your predictions, it's actually quite measured.
I tell you. I mean, listen, I think with her, it's so on a knife edge, because her best self can win this tournament, can beat everybody. You could literally line them all up, and her best self could beat them all. Or she could lose in the second round to Hailey Baptiste. Those are perfectly foreseeable possibilities in my eyes. But, well, I just think she will have her moment, and so I've gone for it this time. But I did find it interesting. I asked the first question of the press conference relating back to what happened in Canada, and asked how she'd sort of processed it in the days that followed. And I don't think she can. Maybe I didn't phrase it that well. She immediately went to the speech and the kind of the outcry about that. When I came out of the room, Catherine, you mentioned to me, would have almost been more interesting for her to assess what happened on the court before the speech, i.e. where her form went and why she seemed so rattled on the court when the crowd were going. And I must say, I didn't push that in that direction, and I kind of wish I had, because I'm more curious about that now.
It was a difficult scenario, I think, for you to do that.
That's also an example, though, of what I was saying before. You ask a question, they interpret it a certain way, and if you don't get a follow-up, it's quite hard then to sort of reel them back.
I'm finding it frustrating, though, because I think they talk about the speech and the aftermath of everything that happened with the speech, sort of issuing the public apology, and she told us today that she spoke to Mboko privately as well. And look, I find that, it's not that I don't find that interesting, but in terms of Naomi Osaka and this tournament and how she might possibly fare, I find it a real red herring, actually. It's not totally irrelevant, but the speech was a symptom of something else that was happening. I want to know why she fell apart so drastically in the match, why the crowd got to her so much when she's been in that sort of situation before, how it could go from kind of 100 to 0 in the space of about a game and a half. That's what I really want to hear about. And I wonder if maybe sort of life imitating art, whether the hoo-ha around the speech has actually occupied the same bandwidth in her mind and prevented her from addressing the reasons behind what happened on the court. Like, I just feel really frustrated by it all.
I think that's what I was trying to get at in the question is, how have you processed the aftermath? And that's where her mind went, really, I think. Maybe it's because she was trying to interpret exactly what the question was, but I suspect. And
by aftermath, she interpreted that as what people had said about her.
Yes.
She said, I haven't seen anything people have written. I've been made aware that people have said, people had a lot to say about it. Obviously, agents and so on would have said, look, Naomi, this hasn't gone down well. I think you should think about saying something publicly.
She was very worried, wasn't she, about Victoria?
Yes, absolutely. And she talked about, the shame she experienced over it and worrying about potential impact it had had on her. And
because also she knows what that's like. I mean, she was on the other side of it, so I'm sure she would have felt acutely guilty of being seen to be like stealing someone's moment.
But it is interesting that is where her mind kept on going, and I wonder if that is proving an unhelpful decoy for everybody to what the real problem is.
It's a much harder thing to face up, that the speech thing you can just write off, like that's got a very sort of clear solution. It's like, well, next time don't do that. Whereas all the stuff that came before it is a lot more complicated and probably is a lot harder to untangle. I suppose for her, the hope is that, well, that was the first like really big match she'd played in a long time. So maybe she can tell herself, well, next time it won't feel so alien, it won't feel so unfamiliar, and you'll be able to handle the moment better.
What if she plays Coco Gauff here and the crowd are against her in a New York way? That's...
But then, I guess the hope is that you can apply some of... Unless it has the negative effect, but you'd hope it's like, remember last time, and surely they would have talked about, well, if this does happen again, how are we going to approach it?
I'd hope so.
Unless, as you said, they are just focusing on the speech. But she is really interesting, Osaka, because she's never, if she's got to a quarterfinal of a Grand Slam, she's won it. So, and in her comeback, she hasn't got to a fourth round. I'm really fascinated just to see what happens, because I think our sense slightly is, like, if she can sort of get to that second week, which she hasn't been able to do in her comeback, then does that sort of single-mindedness kick in? You know, she's been an amazing converter. To have won 4 slams from only getting to 4 Grand Slam quarterfinals is an unbelievable record.
She had a lot of interesting stuff to say about Tomasz Wiktorowski today, didn't she? In both English and, well, in the Japanese portion, but she gives the answers in English, so we were able to listen in.
It was really interesting. In the English portion, she described him as someone who cuts to the chase, which, thinking about who her previous coach was, you know, I don't know how Patrick Mouratoglou coaches, but he's a guy who's got a lot to say. You know, like, generally, I can imagine, like, it's just a different form of giving the message, I think. She also described him as an encyclopedia of tennis, but it was actually the answers in the Japanese portion of the press conference which were really deeper on Tomasz Wiktorowski. She said that she wanted someone with a lot of knowledge. She doesn't like questioning if someone knows what they're talking about. And I thought that was interesting when you look back at her history of coaches. It does strike me that she's someone who goes after kind of super coaches, you know, people who've had a lot of success. It's almost like she's not thinking about what can they do for my game, but like, what have they done for someone else's game, which
that checks out with how she would talk about Patrick Mouratoglou and constantly reference the fact that he coached Serena.
Right, and if you go back earlier in her career when she had Sasha Bayen, he had been in Serena's camp as well. Wim Fissette had obviously had a lot of success before working with Osaka, whereas I just felt that that's a big contrast with some other players who I know go on kind of really painstaking processes of figuring out the right coach based on chemistry and really based on what you can do for me. I think it was an interesting sort of insight that Osaka gave there in terms of how she likes to pick her coaches, and then just had a little bit more detail in terms of some of the stuff that they've been doing. She talked a lot about how it's not technical stuff at this point in the season because tournaments are happening, and he doesn't think that now is the right time to work on technical stuff. So she talks about how it's a lot of tactical stuff, court awareness, picking the right shot at the right time. She explained how he draws little sketches of tennis courts and puts little markers of where she should be hitting her shots. And I think, again, that was something that we did see a little bit of in Canada. We talked about how her movement was a lot better, but also I think her shot selection was better. She wasn't always pulling the trigger. She was building points a little bit better. So I think there have been some, she described it as simple fixes to her game in a short amount of time. And she said it's kind of been mind-blowing to her how simple some of those fixes have been and how effective they've been. So I thought, from that point of view, it was a really positive assessment of Wiktorowski, and I'm really big on that as a reason why we should be feeling good about Osaka here. I think there is something different about her coming into this tournament. I'm just not going all the way because, like you, I don't feel like we've had the full breakdown of what happened in that Montreal final, and that to me is still such a big thing blocking me from predicting her to actually win the tournament here. But there are some positive signs, even if at times the press conference had a bit of a somber mood to it because she was talking so much about the speech and the shame that she felt and how bad she felt. It wasn't a really upbeat, fun Naomi Osaka press conference, which they can be. So
it's been a while though.
It has. You know, there were little jokes in there, wasn't there? She was lovely talking about Gael Monfils.
Yes, that was a nice
really
moment.
Nice, and how much she appreciated playing with him because she remembered queuing up to watch him play in Miami.
I bet
when
that
she was
answer
a
made
kid.
Gail feel old. Except when I was 10.
Yeah. Monfils and Songa, she would go and watch in
it was
Miami.
a lovely answer, really lovely. So that was kind of the main runners and riders that came through the main press conference room today. We also did a few one-on-ones for Tennis Podcast meets.
You haven't mentioned the runner and rider.
Who have I failed to mention? Taylor Fritz?
Amanda Anisimova.
My apologies, Matt. What did we learn?
Not that much. No, well, we actually had a chat about what to ask her, and you said I'd love to know whether she would like to play Iga Swiatek again. So I asked her, how keen is she to play Iga Swiatek again, and have a new experience after the Wimbledon final. I had to slightly tread carefully, because you don't want to give away a player's draw if they don't want to know it, and obviously Swiatek is in Anisimova's quarter, but I thought she'd referenced the Wimbledon final enough that it felt like a question I could ask, and she said yes, she does want to play her again. That is something that
Good, I like that.
I think she's keen. She said, I want to play her when I'm myself, which I thought was quite a good line, quite a telling line. She knows she can trouble top players. She literally beat the world number one before facing Iga Swiatek, and yes, matchups are a thing, but it's not that much of a matchup problem that it was 6-love. She was not herself in that Wimbledon final, and she's done a lot, I think, to try and get over it and learn from it. She said the big thing is nerves, whereas I think in her post-Wimbledon final press conference she was kind of keen to downplay nerves. She talked a lot about how tired she was. Here she really mentioned nerves and stress, and she said that final, hopefully is going to prove to be a lesson in terms of how to deal with those nerves and that stress, and playing Iga Swiatek would be another way to help try and get over it. So I've probably done a disservice there to her press conference. I think we maybe did learn quite a lot from it.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Actually, it was an interesting press conference. She was relaxed, she was loose. It wasn't very well attended, so I think she was kind of able to open up to the questions that she was asked. So
it was a busy time of day, wasn't it?
It was.
The area was.
It was all happening.
Was teeming. David was in there with Felix Auger-Aliassime. I was in there with Ava Lease.
I was there with Tsitsipas. It was funny, actually, Dave. I saw on the interview list there was The Athletic with Tsitsipas, Tennis Podcast with Felix Auger-Aliassime, and I was like, okay, we've both gone down the same route. These are two players in a very similar, occupying a very similar space. Huge in 2018, 2019. Now, not so much.
I mean, for me, they are forever tethered, actually, because the first tournament I covered on site for Amazon Tennis was Indian Wells 2018, and they both had a bit of a breakout tournament there, and everybody got totally giddy on it and started making predictions about how many Grand Slam finals they would inevitably end up playing against one another, and it was just sort of sign and seal that would be happening. And now here they are, what room, I'm doing inverted commas, which doesn't work on a podcast, but Tsitsipas wasn't even in the biggest bit of the area today, was he?
I think one of the most one of the elements of the media days I do find interesting is it's a really brutal way of showing where a player's at.
Absolutely.
You go from, are you in the big interview room? Obviously, that's kind of where everyone wants to be. And then it sort of goes... tennis is so hierarchical in every way. And then before you know it, you're in interview room 6 doing a one-on-one, and that's it.
And Holger Rune has to draw you a map of how to get there.
Yeah. That was Tsitsipas today. I had a one-on-one with him. He didn't do a press conference because there wasn't enough interest. This is a guy who would have previously been... one of the bigger players, and Medvedev didn't do any media because presumably he wasn't requested. How crazy is that? We're talking about a former champion and a former world number one. Like, how quickly you slide into, in inverted commas, irrelevance in, the eyes of the kind of wider tennis community. And it must be, I'm sure a lot of them are like, oh, great, I don't have media commitments. But for a lot of them, it must be quite a blow to their self-esteem, being like, so what are my media commitments today? Yeah, none? No one's requested you, or no one wants to talk to you?
Did you ask Tsitsipas about
I actually didn't.
your locale?
How bummed out are you about talking to me? Because is this the low point of your career?
The thing is, my sense is whenever I've escorted players in that situation, or when I've seen them escorted, their reaction is usually, oh, well, this will be quick then, and I can just go about my day.
But do you think they believe that?
I think in the moment they do believe that, but I think if somebody pointed it out to them, are you aware that this means nobody thinks
I think
you're up to
somebody
much
like
anymore?
Tsitsipas, I think he's noticing and tracking that stuff. I think it depends if it feels like a one-off.
Exactly. I think that would be great if you're used to having to do tons of media commitments, and then you're like, oh,
but
wow, I've dodged a bit of a bullet here.
If it's a trend that closely reflects your on-court trend, then I think you're noticing it. And we've seen it with players just in a scenario where they are brought into the big interview room and for whatever reason nobody shows up.
That's the
I mean,
worst
some
thing
players
in the
handle that
world.
well, but some of them you can tell it's hurting their ego.
And some make
you've got
comments
the
about
moderator off to the side sort of desperately fluffing them and saying, oh, it's because, you know, the announcement wasn't made, or you've clashed with Carlos Alcaraz, or whatever. Like, these are egos that notice things, I think.
That's why I liked Ludmila Samsonova at Wimbledon when she just said, I'm fine, I don't get to find out who I'm playing next on Twitter because nobody's interested in commenting to me about anything.
And Marketa Vondrousova not being upset that we were all she had at Wimbledon.
Oh, and even more than that, she was delighted to be in interview room 6 2 years on from winning the title rather than main interview room as the defending champion. Like, that genuinely suited her personality, I think.
But then I feel like someone like Krejcikova has maybe bristled a little bit at the fact that even as a Wimbledon champion, you know, there's still not a huge amount of interest.
Will Tsitsipas ever get back in the main room, Charlie?
That's a good question. I mean, I kind of have to believe that a lot of it depends on the injury, I guess, which he's talked about, this back problem that, you know, he's been carrying for a couple of years. Like, he is, like, the talent hasn't just gone. So I do think he will get back, you know, somewhere like top 20, maybe even pushing the top 10, but it is hard to see it. But that's kind of the nature of tennis, I guess, when you have these dips, but then things do change incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we seen that this year, that you have one good week and, I mean, then you're suddenly thrust forward, you know, complete your space in the kind of food chain completely changes. So I wouldn't rule out him having, I mean, even this year he has had like the odd very good week.
Goran said he should be top 10 trouble.
Zverev said it yesterday about both Tsitsipas and Medvedev that they should get back in the top 10. I mean, yeah, it's I think he will. He'll have another hot streak.
Okay, that's it for part 1. We'll be back in part 2 with some punchy predictions. Welcome back to part 2 of the tennis podcast, where I'd like to get some punchy predictions from you all. David,
Haven't I done my bit? I gave you a title yesterday.
Yeah, we've got the champions and the runners-up, I think, from David and Matt from yesterday's show, unless you have the right to change your mind on the basis of anything that was said today.
I refuse.
In the press conference room. No, you're going Swiatek, you're going Sinner, Matt.
Correct.
Sinner to beat Alcaraz in the final, bold, and Swiatek to beat Sabalenka in the final, also bold. David, just to balance that out, is going for Osaka to beat who in the final?
Who did I go? Was
Rybakina.
it Rybakina in the end? Yeah.
Osaka, Rybakina, and you've got Alcaraz beating Sinner.
Correct, yeah.
Charlie, over to you.
Look how serious he takes it. He's not going to go out on a limb.
Normally,
This is a
Charlie
man
likes
that
to
used-
palm his predictions off to his mum.
Yeah, this is a man that used his mum as a human shield in order to not make
That was
predictions.
for the wider predictions. I'm more than happy to make.
To be fair,
These
Charlie
guys
has
just-
made some excellent predictions on this podcast.
Absolutely, that's why we want them.
Yeah, I was throughout Wimbledon, I was very clear, and before, that Alcaraz wouldn't win it. This time, I don't have such a strong sense on that, and given I don't have a really strong sense of it, I think I've got to go for a Sinner Alcaraz final. But I wouldn't be surprised if Djokovic got there as the kind of third man. I think he's kind of ready to pick up the pieces if someone takes out Alcaraz. I don't know if it'll necessarily be Djokovic, but I think, I'll go Sinner Alcaraz. And then on the women's, The thing with women's Grand Slams is they are often illogical. So trying to apply logic is hard, and that's why...
It's better to do what I did.
Yeah, but that's why I'm going to go Sabalenka to win it, because like she should have won one already this year and she hasn't. And so I kind of feel like now, when she's coming in and there are more doubts about her than there have been at any of the previous 3 Grand Slams, and going further back than that. But really, I think, you know, everyone is suddenly like, wow, she could well end the year without a Grand Slam title, which, you know, that's never been a thought I think anyone really entertained. It's gradually got to the point where it almost feels likely. So I'm going to go her to win it. The runner-up is so hard. I'm going to go Madison Keys.
Yeah,
Fun.
I'm glad Keys got a mention. She's lurking. She's not my prediction, but she's just nagging at my
a little bit like last year with
mind.
Pegula getting it. I don't know. I just feel like that could.
Yeah.
And that would be. I mean, it would be a great story to repeat the Australian Open final. Nice ring composition to the year.
I think I'm going Swiatek. She's just in such a good place.
Logically, it should be, but just for her to win 2 slams in a row, I don't know. That feels like very rare on the women's
She's
side.
not done that yet before, has she?
I'm certainly not taking her against the field.
When did any?
Yeah, she won.
No, she can't have done, because the only other
She won the
French in the US. No,
in the US,
no, not
yeah,
two
she
in a row,
can't have done it consecutively. I mean, when was the last time anyone won
Osaka
consecutive?
it would be, wouldn't it? US and
2020
Australia.
and then 2021.
Osaka, you say?
Yeah, so that we're talking more than 4 years ago. It's very rare.
I think I might go for Rybakina to take out Sabalenka. I think I might go for a Swiatek Rybakina final. And I'm gonna be bold and go Alcaraz Sinner.
Yeah.
And who's winning?
I think I'm going Alcaraz.
I think Sinner will win. I just can't bet against Sinner on a hardcore.
Yeah.
Like until... Yeah,
I
don't know.
always go for Alcaraz, don't I?
Whereas I think increasingly Sinner to me feels like the kind of default pick.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I think I probably need to revise my policy.
Yeah, just like, and I know we do over-index that Bertic loss, but I just feel like he is the more likely to be upset in a way that Sinner is really hard to see.
Don't you think the point I made a few days ago, and I know Sinner was really ill and had to pull out, but there was something about Alcaraz that wanted to prove a point, I thought, that week. And I think that stands now. And I don't think that's nothing. I think, you know how we talk about he's going to have to go out against Riley Opelka super focused. I kind of feel like the whole tournament is that now, because it's not gone all his own way. He's lost the Wimbledon final, and I think that will focus him.
No, I think that's a really good point. And even like the Sinner final in Cincinnati, like, of course Sinner was really compromised, but there are plenty of opponents who Alcaraz could have played who was compromised, and he would have started. I mean, even Zverev the day before, and he would have started 2 days before. He would have started doing.
He would have missed 7 serves in a row.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but the fact that it was Sinner meant he was locked in enough that he wasn't going to start doing silly stuff. So no, I do think that's. I mean, that's when. If you can find a way to kind of get him fully focused, then that would make him almost unbeatable. That's his biggest weakness. So that will be interesting that he's got an element of revenge.
Who will be the first top 10 seed to fall in the men's and the women's? Is Holger Rune a top 10 seed?
No, 11.
Oh. Because he's got Bertic. Although Bertic's in form,
playing
so that's
right now.
That's a problem.
I think Emma Navarro is vulnerable on the women's side. She's really struggled for form. She went to play this week, didn't she, rather than play the mixed doubles. She went to try and get some matches and some form, and that didn't go too well. I think she's got Yafan Wong in the first round, but Katie McNally is lurking potentially for her in the second round. I've been quite sort of quietly impressed with McNally since her comeback. She played great against Swiatek at Wimbledon, for example. She was the only one to get a set off Swiatek at Wimbledon. So I think Navarro is a definite contender.
David?
It's between Musetti and Draper.
Musetti's a
He's
good pick,
standout.
isn't he? Because, like, if we were doing an old school Wimbledon thing and adjusting the seedings for the surface, he probably wouldn't be seeded on a hard court, would he?
I'm going to go Draper because I really do think he is short physically.
I mean, Musetti jumps off the page to me. The fact even he's got Teshi Perricard in the first round, like, I wouldn't be amazed if he lost that. I know Teshi Perricard's not in good form, but I mean, Khachanov is the number 9 seed. I mean, I know he does come in off the back of that final, but
Basavaredi.
Yeah, and we've seen so many times this year that the good run at a lead-in tournament can massively go one of two ways, and so it wouldn't be a huge surprise.
And in the women's, Navarro's...
Yeah, Navarro is the one, when you
that.
look at the 10, she is the one... I mean, she's the lowest ranked, but she's also the one in the worst form. I think I probably would... I mean... And this would have seemed...
Tomljanovic, anyone looking at that? Goff,
yeah, and, Tomljanovic is, she was the one who finally beat Serena when Serena, in her farewell tournament, and kind of, was able to handle that Ash crowd. I mean, I'm not going to say her, but Pegula is in my thoughts in a way, and you guys were talking about this the other day, like, she's suddenly in that place of being like, I don't really know what I'm going to get from her, which for a player whose stock in trade for a while was guaranteed quarter-final, even if she didn't go beyond it, but she was missed consistency, as Ons Jabeur alluded to in the note that she wrote during the French Open talking about the women's tour. That's kind of been her stock in trade. That's gone. But I think Navarro and Musetti, for me, would be the obvious ones.
David? You're down on Miran Draver, and she's got Alicia Parks.
Yeah,
first round.
I was about to joke about Jasmine Paolini, but I won't do that.
I've saved you.
Yeah, I do think Andreeva's gone from being the player I was the most up on a few months ago to really feeling unsure about. Only in this pocket of the season. I don't have any long-term concerns
she's
at all.
She's been injured, hasn't she? And she's taken a couple of tough losses.
I wonder whether she's a little bit burnt out.
Yeah.
It's we forget how many greats, all-time greats, would get to this portion of the season. Jim Courier would always flame out at the US Open. He had one good run to the final, but every other year when he was dominating the tennis circuit, he would get to this tournament, he would just look like he'd got so little left, and yet he would seem to be the perfectly configured player for this environment and surface and so forth. It's a long season, and she's had a lot of wins in the springtime. And she just looks like she could do with a long holiday to me and start up again in January.
I mean, that's what, and I'm looking into this for a piece, but what I think is so interesting, even on the men's side, because a lot's been made of the fact that on the women's side there have been, lots of different winners, but that's also true of Wimbledon. Whereas on the men's side, the US Open is a massive outlier in that no one has dominated this event in the last, coming up to 20 years. I mean, Federer was the last man to retain it. That was 2008. That feels crazy. And there have been so many different winners here compared to all the other slams. You think of all those one-time winners, Cilic, Thiem, Medvedev, Del Potro. And so what I think is interesting is you've got the ultimate, chaotic slam meeting Yannick Sinner, who is apart from some of the off-court stuff, but on-court he is so unchaotic, and can he be the guy to tame this major in a way? Can he finally be someone who can come along and defend it? Because you wouldn't have thought kind of chaos and Sinner would go together, but maybe he can just block all of that stuff out and just focus.
Surprise package. You can either pick a man and a woman, or you can just pick one.
A name that's jumping out to me in the men's draw, given what we've just talked about in terms of top seeds who we think are vulnerable, we've said Musetti, we've said Draper, so I'm thinking who in that section might be able to take advantage of it. And look, it's not an absolutely wild name. Certainly tennis podcast listeners will be very familiar with the name, but your average tennis fan is not going to know too much about him, and that's Diallo. I actually think he's in a section of the draw there where it wouldn't shock me if he is Sinner's quarterfinal opponent. Mazzetti,
It's an interesting pick.
Bublik, Draper, Caboli, a kind of all in that section. But I think maybe Diallo might come through. I think he's got a game which is just beginning to sort of hurt some top players and just beginning to flourish a little bit. So there we go.
I think
31st seed Diallo.
I think that's strong. I'll accept a low seed as a dark horse or surprise package, however you want to put it. David.
Well, I put Mboko in the semi-finals, and yet I don't feel as though that's anything left field anymore.
I will not accept that as a surprise.
Oh, okay.
She was in the main room today, David.
Well,
it has to be somebody
life
that
comes at you fast.
would be in the area. I did see Diallo in the area, so he's
so
safe.
That counts.
Yeah.
I think it's been more of a building process than out of left field. But I do think Caboli could have a heck of a run.
You're a big Caboli guy.
I do think. I think his top level is seriously scary, and I mean, in a section of the draw where he's in with Mazzetti, I love watching Mazzetti.
I love how that's where everyone targets. Where's Mazzetti? That's where the surprise is.
He's such a beautiful player to watch, and he was wonderful at the mixed doubles the other day. Reminders in there, but they're due to meet in the third round on paper, and I'd go into that probably thinking Caboli wins, and then he's in the Diallo and Draper section there. He could end up playing against Jannik Sinner, could Caboli in the quarterfinals, and I really wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see.
I like it. Charlie.
It's difficult, this. I wonder if there are so many Americans in both draws, and I just wonder if someone could kind of catch a little bit of momentum, become a bit of a thing amongst the fans. Looking at someone like Ethan Quinn, I mean, he's got a first round match that he could well win. Then he would play Nakashima. I think, Nakashima's a good player, he's a consistent player, but I think that's one he could come through. He would then have to play Taylor Fritz in the third round, which would obviously be very hard. But even that, I mean, getting to the third round for someone like that.
If I'm going on Charlie's American theme, just looking at the women's draw, potentially like a McCartney Kessler.
Yeah.
Meredith. Go on, Meredith.
But if I do that, I'm underestimating Jasmine Paolini.
Yes.
Because they're due to meet in the third round.
And we don't do that.
Well, we all know Brad Gilbert is picking Aisling Kruger as his dark horse. Seen on ESPN the other day. Pam asked him for a dark horse, and Aisling Kruger came out, and Pam didn't know what to say.
I mean, could Paolini be one of those players who we assume will do well?
Do it, Charlie.
Well, no, I just mean from the this theme this year, or certainly at Wimbledon, it was a theme of have a good lead in event, have a bad Wimbledon. I don't know, just because I thought when we were naming the top 10, when we were going through the top 10, I didn't even consider Paolini really, because in my mind I was like, oh, she's kind of immune. She's just had a really good run in Cincinnati. I don't know, maybe that could go the other way. Iva Jovic, I mean, that would be an exciting second round match.
Yeah, it would.
She
packs a punch, yeah. Story. This one's mostly for you, Charlie. Like the story you'd most like to happen, a story you'd like to write this fortnight.
Well, I mean, just player-wise, just building on something David said there. I mean, Mboko going all the way would be pretty spectacular. And I interviewed her today, and there is something incredibly convincing about her. I mean, because she was talking about, I said to her, was it kind of weird? You beat all those Grand Slam champions. And, a lot of them, including Osaka, were players that you would have did look up to. Did you have to kind of rewire your brain? We've heard so much about players, or seen it, freezing against their idols. And she was kind of like, no, not really. Once I'm out there, I kind of, I feel pretty confident, whatever. And then I was like, do you fear anyone? And she was like, no, basically. And I was just like, God, that fearlessness. And we saw it with someone like Andreescu here. Sometimes that's when you're at your most danger. I know it would be a huge shock, but for the first time I thought I wouldn't totally rule that out. You've got someone who is just brimming with confidence, is fearless, isn't going to overthink it. That's a pretty good concoction to have. And, we always assume, and generally it is the case that, like, experience is really helpful and you build and you build and you build, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Remember Tracy Austin saying that actually it was those really early on in her career, before she kind of had much experience, that was when, it was kind of most natural.
I like it.
So that would be an amazing story. I think people would get so engaged. We saw what happened in Canada. Obviously, that's her home tournament, but I think the US Open will go wild for her if she gets on a run.
Final question in this section, and this one's just for you, Charlie, because David and Matt already know the answer. How much does a lobster roll cost in the food court?
I mean, it's going to be high, the fact you're asking. $35.
$39.50.
Wow. I mean, New York never ceases to amaze.
Yeah.
The price of stuff.
Yeah, and yet that did amaze me. I don't think we're naive about New York prices. We all stopped in our tracks when we saw that.
Did you get one?
No, not made of money, Charlie.
It's almost an entire Friends subscription.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing. I kind of want to get one to know, like, how big they are, how much lobster's in there.
That's got to be a damn good lobster
roll. Work out the price per gram. Yeah. Good. Bring your wallet if you're coming to the US Open. That's it for part 2. Join us in part 3. We'll go through tomorrow, Sunday's day 1 order of play. Welcome back to part 3 of the tennis podcast, where we have an order of play to go through. In fact, we have 3 orders of play. We actually know who's going to be on the main show courts for both. For all 3 of the round 1 days, but we'll do this day by day. We've got daily pods, we've got plenty of time to go through Monday and Tuesday's order of play. So let's stick with Sunday. And opening the Arthur Ashe Stadium on day 1 of the tournament is Ben Shelton. Big
My
assignment.
mate Ben.
Your mate Ben. And he's playing Ignacio Busa? How are we pronouncing that, Matt?
He's from Peru.
He's from Peru. He's ranked 136 in the world, and that is the extent of my Boos knowledge.
I became aware of him this summer. I think he got to a semi-final on tour in one of the, Gestards or Borstadts.
Oh, yeah.
I think it might have been Gestard. I think he might have lost to one Manuel Cerundolo. But he's been doing a lot of winning on the Challenger Tour.
Okay.
I think he is much more comfortable on the clay, and I'm going to use the words good draw for Ben Shelton, I think. But Shelton, I think, would like a vibesy slot, and first on Ashe is not really that.
He had that last year in his first round as well. Played Dominic Thiem, which you're right.
God, that feels like.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what that feels like, but it's sad.
Punchy predictions here, please. We're going Shelton in 3?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just learned of the existence of Ignacio Busa, so I'm going Shelton in 3. That is the first match on Ashe Day session. Second match is Aryna Sabalenka against Rebecca Masarova. Sabalenka in 2.
Yes.
They've played this year, haven't they, those two? I'm sure I have a memory of. I'm going to check that. But yes, I would predict Sabalenka would win that.
And night session on Ashe, we might get some interesting punchy predictions here. Novak Djokovic starts against Lerner Thiem, and I've got Dominic Thiem, tragedy on the brain. And Jessica Pegula against Maya Sharif is second on.
Maybe Djokovic loses a set.
Yeah.
Could see that.
David.
Yeah, I'd go the same. 4.
That could be. That's a fun.
That should be really fun.
Yeah.
Like
I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the rallies
me
are going to be
too.
great.
I think the crowd would be really into it.
There'll be lots of shots that Thiem hits, slice backhands, etc., that make the crowd go, oh, because it's just gone hovering over the net within an inch and stayed in. But I think that will only last so long.
Yeah, Djokovic in 4. I'm going Djokovic in 4.
Because he lost a set in both of his 2 rounds of the Australian Open, and one was against Basper and I remember that. He lost the first set, actually, there. I can imagine it being a similar type match to that. Like, lose the set, but never really in much
I think
danger.
of Basper and Tien as a real sort of duo.
Yeah.
I'll be following them both closely. And Sharif against Pegula?
I do think Pegula will win, but, yeah, I wouldn't consider it such a foregone conclusion like I might have done previously.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of points. I mean, a lot of pressure on her. Final points to defend.
It's been such a different year for Pegula. She doesn't feel reliable in the way she used to.
And she said in her press conference, which was yesterday, she was one of the first top players in, just like did feel a bit weird having the mixed doubles so early. Like she's already played in front of a big night ash crowd,
and I think she had a slightly weird time with Jack Draper, didn't she?
I think that'd be fair to say.
I don't think they're going out for dinner, are they?
But yeah, like she nodded that, didn't she? She's like, you have that kind of,
like she's had a high.
Yeah, you've had the high, you've had the adrenaline, all of that, and then it's like, then you're back into like cooling your blood pressure, your sort of temperature, and you're just like warming up again to get high again. So that is, and none of them have ever done this before.
Armstrong opens with Emma Raducanu against Ina Shibahara. What do you think about Raducanu, Charlie?
I am interested to see how she does here. Like, she comes in with kind of more form and more match time than she has done at a major for a long time. So I think she'll win that one. And I think she could play Sabalenka in the 3rd round again.
Rybakina.
Oh no, Rybakina. That's it. Yeah,
3rd round. I think she'll get there.
Yeah, I think she will. Yeah, she's done. I mean, that's kind of what she's been doing at the Slams this year, and that's, I think, why she brought on Roig. Like, she's talked about it. She's been solid. She's been getting to a certain level, but can she push on beyond that?
Is it potentially Kudermetova in the 2nd round for her? Like, it's not easy draw, even to get to Rybakina. I think Shibahara is a player who's obviously more known for her doubles. She's really made a thing last year of trying to become a singles player. I think even the fact that she's in a slam is kind of a pretty good sign for her singles. She's gonna throw variety at you. She's gonna try and come forward. I actually think maybe that's not the worst thing in the world for Raducanu. I remember seeing what she did to like Vondrousova at Wimbledon, for example. I think I worry a bit more about Raducanu where there's the big power problem of power discrepancy. I think that's an okay matchup.
Amelia Nava against Taylor Fritz is 2nd on Armstrong during the day. Fritz will be fine there, won't he?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
And Armstrong night session opens with Jasmine Paolini against Destiny Ayava, the Australian. And 2nd on is Daniil Medvedev losing for a 2nd slam in a row to Benjamin Bonzi.
He's going to turn the tables. Medvedev's going to win this time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Punchy set prediction, please.
4.
Charlie.
I mean, massively on upset watch, to the point where I guess how even big an upset would that be?
Even an upset?
Yeah. I really struggle with that one. Maybe Medvedev in 5.
We're going to be here. Well, we're going to be somewhere very late watching Daniil Medvedev look dishevelled against Benjamin Bonzi, aren't we? That's what we get. That's my prediction. Grandstand is Jakub Menšik against Nicholas Jarry. Tennis Podcast coded matchup first.
What a day session that is.
Although Matt has stopped mentioning Nicholas Jarry.
And that clashes with Fulham.
Yeah. Alexandra Ayala and Clara Towson, 2nd on Grandstand.
That's a fun match.
That's the match of tomorrow, I think, isn't it? Emma Navarro against Yifan Wong. Wong Yifan is 3rd on Grandstand, and 4th on is Jesper de Jong against Brandon Nakashima. Court 17, Shevchenko against Davidovich Fokina. Then Rebecca Marino against Leylah Fernandez, all Canadian. Clash Jirina Hechka against Borna Coric, who is apparently staying in the hotel that Matt and David stayed in a few years ago, where Matt was checked in as Matt Loberts.
Yeah.
Happy memories.
Never not
and I
been
had
funny.
to check out of that hotel 3 times, and they were confused every time.
And Belinda Bencic is last on Court 17.
And playing Zhang Shui, which I think is really interesting. A year ago we were on we were on longest losing streak watch.
Yeah.
She managed to end that just after the US Open. I'm pleased that...
I think she's qualified here, hasn't she?
And I really thought that her career could be over, this time last year. So it's actually really nice that she's back in the draw here. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one.
Thomas Mahach is on court 5 tomorrow. He takes on Luca Nardi.
God, remember his last match here? That disaster class against Draper.
The egg lay.
So bad.
And his reward for that is to be scheduled on the court that Holger Rune posted a map to on his Twitter. Wasn't it court 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually
really close to us. It's really close to where we are.
It's a nice call.
Very easy to get to, Holger.
I tell you what, he'd be annoyed to be in the area.
Yes.
Although, I think that's what he certainly wasn't in the main room. Anyway.
I mean, it's quite a busy Sunday day. It doesn't,
Do you think? Well, I think they've gone big on the show courts. Like, they've got really good names, like Shelton, Sabalenka, Djokovic, Pegula, Raducanu, Fritz.
To have Djokovic
Medvedev
on a Sunday feels very unusual.
I remember Australia did it. I'm sure Australia did it with in Sabalenka.
They had Sabalenka
and Djokovic.
Sabalenka's always on Sunday.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Djokovic Prismic was a Sunday, because then Sabalenka played after it. And it was really, really late. I think they did like a defending
champions
They
thing.
didn't have a Sunday start at that point.
I think that was the first one, wasn't it, in Australia?
I'm pretty sure that Prismic one was a Monday. So I've got to check this now.
Anyway, well, my slight issue with the order of play is that they're not using that many outside courts. And I think it's going to be packed. I think it's going to be like hard for players, like hard for fans. Hard for fans to see the matches they want to see if they're not spreading it out among all the courts. And that's what Australia got wrong the first time they did a Sunday start. I think they corrected it. Just a little bit worried about that. And also with Ash only having 2 day session matches, you get that thing where if Ash finishes early, everyone pours out and wants to watch matches on the outside courts. This is something that I feel like we get a lot of messages about people who come to the US Open and experience that sort of fan experience. We're a little bit shielded from that. But
it's important.
It is a thing, and I'm just a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, and you do worry that it's not something the organisers are factoring in really at all. Maybe I'm wrong, and the proof will be in the pudding tomorrow. What else have we got? We've got Marketa Vondrousova is on court 7.
As is Corentin Moutet. That's where David will be. Tan Griekspoor against Adrian Manarino. Be interesting to see how it feels. It's kind of crazy that this is the US Open's first Sunday start. Feels like they are the sort of slam that would have been one of the front runners.
The
with
idea
doing
that
this,
last year the Sunday was like a free day. That's just when does that ever happen? And obviously they were like, what are we doing here? There's loads of money to be made.
We could be making money out of $40 lobster rolls, and that is exactly what they'll be doing tomorrow, but not from us. We'll be buying slop in the media centre, and we'll be very grateful for it. We'll of course be back tomorrow with a podcast and each of the next 15 days. Thank you, Charlie, for playing along with the predictions. Appreciate it. I know it's painful for you.
No, great to be here. It was those big predictions. I found the predicting a quarter final.
I know
is just so hard.
Yeah, it's hard. No one said it was easy. As I've hinted at, we've been doing Tennis Podcast Meets interviews over the course of the next couple of days, and that show where we have collectively spoken to Karen Khachanov, Felix Auger Aliassime, Artur Rinderknecht, Ava Lees, Fran Jones and Karolina Mukova. That show will be going up later today for friends of the Tennis Podcast. So if you'd like to become a friend and get the chance to listen to that, and it really is worth a listen, there's some fascinating insights from those players in there, then the link to become a friend will be in our show notes. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we have a live show in Wrexham, Wales. We've played New York. Now we're going to play the New York of Wales.
Correct.
Which is what
everyone calls Wrexham.
Everybody calls Wrexham. We'll be there on October the 22nd. Our live show in New York this week was truly one of the highlights of our podcasting lives. It was incredibly special, and we can't wait to do it again in Wrexham. And that is exactly what we'll be doing on October 22nd. We'll put the link to buy tickets in our show notes, and we'll hopefully see you there. Unfortunately, Charlie's got a Football Clichés live show in Glasgow on the same night, so...
'Tis the season for podcast live shows, it would seem.
Yeah, absolutely. We're competing for an audience with Football Clichés. Right. Hello to our mascots. Hello, Phoebe. Hello, Maisie. Hello, Roger. Hello to our executive producers, Greg, Chris and Jeff. Let's have some shout-outs, Matt.
Are you ready, everyone?
Yeah.
We have Christine Marlowe from St Helens, Merseyside.
Hi, Christine.
Hello, Christine.
Like Christine James. Christine Truman as was.
Yes. I used to have a...
Christine Everett, presumably.
Ooh. Yeah.
Stunned into silence.
I'm guessing. I mean...
I used to have a friend in St Helens. I got totally ghosted by her. Never know what
gosh.
It keeps me up at night still. This was a long time ago. I'm over it. But yeah. Laura.
Would anyone like to hear more about Christine?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
You just don't hear about St Helens a lot, do you?
It's rugby league.
Yeah.
Hotbed.
Yeah.
What can I say about Christine? She says, in my school days in the 50s, Wimbledon was the only tennis shown extensively on the TV. Through my working life, I always said that if I won the pools, the lottery, I'd apply for a Wimbledon debenture. No success. But when I retired, I realised that I could afford to try my luck, and with a friend who I'd met as a co-member of the Tim Henman fan club, I crossed my fingers and applied. We couldn't believe it, and we were successsul. So she was able to attend the championships every day for the last 15 years.
Every day? No.
Yes, if you have a debenture, you can go every day.
So cool.
Wow.
Can we hear more about the Tim Henman fan club?
Yeah.
More
Absolutely.
/ everything.
Yeah, the rival fan club to Charlie leading the Greg Rosetsky fan club.
We used to host the annual. We were present at the hosting of the annual Greg Rosetsky fan club meeting at the Royal Albert Hall.
Because we worked for the tournaments, not because we were that bothered about the fan club bit.
Yeah. So, Christine, please let us know everything about the Tim Henman fan club. Thank you.
We've also got Daniel Tam or Tham. I'm not sure.
Right, Daniel.
The H is
Daniel Nestor.
Like Daniel Evans.
Yeah.
Daniel Nestor comes out of Charlie Eccleshare's mouth, the Canadian player.
That's so in your wheelhouse.
He'd have been winning the mixed doubles if he'd have been allowed to enter.
Our Daniel is from Sweden and is celebrating his 10-year anniversary of listening to the podcast.
Aww.
He says, I remember I started at the US Open in 2015.
When Catherine was walking into a tree.
Is that 10 years ago?
Probably. Or arguing with the bus driver. One of the two.
What a decade, Daniel. Hope it's been good for you too. Thank you.
And finally, we have Grace Thomas from Mason, Ohio.
Hi, Grace.
Hello, Grace.
Grace says, last year you guys weren't able to think of a tennis player named Grace. After a quick Google, I found Grace Min. She's an American player who turned pro in 2008 and reached a career high of 97.
We'll take it,
Very
Grace.
much, Grace. I really appreciate it.
We'll take that. And Mason, Ohio, of course, where the Cincinnati tournament actually is.
Exactly. And Grace has been a listener since 2020.
Oh, I bet Grace has been to Kings Island.
Hope so.
What a place.
King Grace Min has.
Career high 97. I do not.
Grace, thank you very much for your support of the Tennis Podcast. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Christine. Thank you,
Daniel
of Nestor fame. We are part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Do check out Charlie's work and Matt's work and all of the stuff on the Athletic over the coming fortnight. It's going to be an awesome fortnight. We can't wait. We also can't wait to get out of this wind tunnel though. So thank you for listening. We'll speak to you tomorrow on day one of the 2025 US Open.